Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the strange and shimmering realm of quantum consciousness theory. It's the idea that your mind may not simply be a product of electrical sparks between brain cells, but could instead be dancing in tune with the very rules that govern the universe at its most mysterious level, the rules of quantum mechanics. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now, feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into quantum consciousness together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. Imagine for a moment that you're lying in bed, the room dim, the hum of the night surrounding you. Your heart beats steadily, and your thoughts wander toward a simple yet puzzling question. Why does it feel like anything at all to be you? The steady thump of your pulse, the quiet recognition of your breath, the warmth of your blanket. These are not just mechanical events, they are experienced, and that is the puzzle. Scientists call it the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, though they're not really so easy, are about how neurons fire, how memory forms, how attention shifts. Those are questions we can study with brain scans and electrodes. But the hard problem is different. It asks, why does the firing of neurons come with the inner glow of awareness? Why does electrical activity inside your skull give rise to the taste of morning coffee, or the joy of laughter, or the ache of longing? You can point to the circuits of the brain the way you can point to the wires of a piano. You can say which neuron lights up when you see the colour red, or which network hums when you remember your grandmother's face. But the question remains, how do those sparks turn into the felt redness of red, the lived warmth of memory? A piano score can tell you what notes are played, but it does not explain why the music feels as it does when you hear it. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have wrestled with this. Some argue that consciousness is simply what happens when enough complexity arises. According to that view, once you have billions of neurons exchanging signals, awareness appears automatically like steam from boiling water. Others find that unsatisfying because it does not explain the direct experience itself. It describes the mechanisms but not the music. And so, some minds began to wonder if the answer lies not in the visible scale of neurons and synapses, but in the hidden rules that lie beneath all matter, the quantum rules. These are the laws that govern the behavior of the tiniest particles, electrons, photons, and atoms. They are the rules that allow a particle to be in more than one place at once, like a coin balanced on both heads and tails. They allow distant objects to remain mysteriously connected, their fates linked even across great space, like two bells ringing in harmony, though no air carries the sound. At first glance, it might seem far-fetched to imagine that such delicate phenomena could survive inside the warm, watery, noisy environment of the human brain. Critics argue that quantum effects vanish too quickly in such conditions, dissolving in trillionths of a second, like frost melting under the morning sun. Yet life itself has surprised us before. Plants, for instance, seem to use quantum waves to channel energy in photosynthesis with astonishing efficiency. Birds may navigate the Earth's magnetic field through quantum entanglement inside their eyes. Even our sense of smell may depend on vibrations. At the quantum scale, if plants and birds can shelter these fragile whispers of the universe, perhaps neurons have found a way too. And if they have, then the hard problem of consciousness might not be answered by circuits alone, but by a deeper song woven into the fabric of existence. Your awareness could be more than a byproduct of signals. It might be a reflection of the cosmos itself, folded into the dance of quantum possibilities collapsing into the definite experience of now. It's a thought that can feel both dizzying and comforting. Dizzying because it suggests that the essence of who you are is tied to the deepest mysteries of physics. Comforting because it means that in some small way, your awareness is not isolated at all. It is connected to every electron, every star, every shimmer of possibility in the universe. As we rest with this puzzle, the mind can quiet itself. We are not here to rush toward an answer. We are here to sit with the mystery, like sitting by a lake at night, watching ripples spread across its surface. Consciousness is the ripple, the brain is the lake, and perhaps beneath the water, the hidden rules of quantum mechanics are at play, shaping every wave. From here, the story opens into a deeper exploration. To truly understand why some scientists believe your brain might be computing with quantum rules, we need to take a calm walk into the world of quantum phenomena themselves, what they are, how they surprise us, and why they just might provide the fertile soil where awareness could bloom. If we follow the thread a little further, we arrive at the realm of what science has already explained quite well: how neurons and synapses work, how electrical activity ripples through your brain like waves in a crowded sea. For many decades, neuroscientists have mapped out the circuits, drawn the diagrams, and even managed to light up living brains in scanners so we can watch thought flicker in real time. In this view, consciousness is treated almost like the product of a very advanced computer. Neurons are the hardware, signals jumping across synapses are the data transfers. Patterns of firing make up the programs, and from this complexity, something like awareness is expected to simply arise. But here's where the puzzle returns. If you zoom in on one neuron, you can measure its voltage. You can watch ions of sodium and potassium drift across its membrane. You can even describe exactly when it fires. Multiply this by billions, and you can explain how muscles contract, how memories are recalled, and how senses relay information. It is impressive, elegant, and precise. Yet when you step back and ask, why does it feel like something to be the brain doing this? The explanation grows quiet. You can describe the orchestra, list the instruments, note the timing of the drums, the swell of the strings, but none of that tells you why the music moves you to tears. Some philosophers say this is because the brain as computer story is missing something fundamental. The calculations, they argue, are not the same thing as the experience. It's like comparing a recipe to the taste of the meal. The recipe can tell you how long to bake bread and what ingredients to add, but nowhere in the recipe do you actually taste the bread's warmth and texture. That is something else entirely. And so the classical view, though powerful, leaves us with a gap. It can predict behaviour, map brain regions, and simulate networks, but it does not bridge the divide between mechanism and the inner glow of subjectivity. This gap is where the idea of quantum consciousness enters. But before we step into that shimmering landscape, let us pause with the classical side for a moment longer, because it is worth appreciating what it already achieves. Imagine a neuron firing. The process begins when tiny charged particles, positively charged sodium, positively charged potassium, and positively charged calcium, move in carefully timed patterns across the cell's surface. These are the ions of basic chemistry, but in the brain they are the notes of a symphony. When enough of them align, the neuron suddenly surges with the electrical current, like a wave rising on the shore. That surge races down its long fibre, called the axon, and at the end, chemicals spill into the gap between neurons, passing the signal onward. The whole thing is astonishingly fast. A neuron can fire hundreds of times in a single second. Multiply this by the billions of neurons in your brain, and you have an orchestra playing a vast composition every instant. No one doubts this is remarkable. From such firing patterns come the control of your limbs, the recall of your name, even the comprehension of these words as you hear them. The problem is not that the classical picture is wrong. It works beautifully for explaining movement and memory. The problem is that it does not explain why you also have an inner life. The sensation of softness as you sink into a pillow, the glow of nostalgia when you remember an old song. That is why thinkers from different corners, philosophy, physics, and neuroscience, have wondered whether the missing piece might lie in a deeper layer of reality. Perhaps neurons are not just electrical circuits, but also hosts to subtler processes governed by the same rules that shape atoms and light. To see why this thought is even considered, we need to recall what those deeper rules look like. In the everyday world, things behave in ways that feel solid and predictable. A ball rolls, a clock ticks, a candle burns. But at the level of the very small, the quantum level, the rules bend into something stranger. Electrons can be in more than one place until measured. Light can act like both a wave and a particle. Particles can become mysteriously linked so that changing one instantly affects the other, even across vast distances. These effects are not guesses, they are measured realities, repeated in experiments countless times. For a long while, scientists assumed these phenomena could not possibly matter for biology, much less for the brain. After all, the brain is warm and wet, filled with chemical noise. Surely the delicate quantum states would vanish instantly, dissolving faster than a raindrop on hot stone, and yet nature seems to have surprised us. In the past few decades, evidence has emerged that some biological systems manage to preserve quantum effects long enough to be useful. In photosynthesis, for example, when a plant captures a photon of sunlight, the energy is not transferred like a ball tossed from one hand to another. Instead, it spreads as a quantum wave, sampling many paths at once until it finds the most efficient route. In birds, magnetic sense seems to arise from quantum entanglement inside certain proteins, letting them navigate invisible fields across continents. Even our sense of smell may involve quantum vibrations guiding the nose to distinguish similar molecules. These examples are like gentle hints from nature that the quantum world may not be confined to laboratories or cosmic physics. It may, in subtle ways, already live within biology. If photosynthesis can use quantum waves to guide energy, if birds can rely on entanglement to migrate, if smell can depend on quantum vibrations, then perhaps the brain too might have learned how to shelter such delicate phenomena. And if so, the missing bridge between mechanism and experience might not be mechanical at all. It might be woven from the same fabric that allows particles to be in two states at once, or two minds to glimpse a shared resonance. Our quiet exploration now turns toward this possibility. What if consciousness itself depends on these hidden rules? What if awareness is not an accidental byproduct of neurons firing, but an unfolding of the universe's most mysterious principles within the sanctuary of the brain? From here, we will gently step into the idea that inside your very cells may lie tiny structures capable of playing quantum melodies, the microtubules that form the scaffolding of neurons, and perhaps the stage for consciousness itself. As we drift further into the story, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of the quantum world, a place where the usual rules of common sense quietly fold themselves away. This is the landscape physicists discovered when they peered closely into the behaviour of matter at its tiniest scales. In our everyday lives, objects follow simple and solid patterns. A stone tossed into the air falls, a clock ticks forward, a candle burns down in one direction. But beneath this steady world lies another, stranger one. It is a world of probabilities instead of certainties, of both and instead of either or. One of the most famous features of this realm is called superposition. Imagine flipping a coin. In the ordinary world, the coin lands as either heads or tails. But in the quantum world, until you look, the coin does not choose. It exists as a soft blur of both heads and tails at the same time. It is as if a melody hovers between two notes, undecided, humming both together. Only when you peak, when you measure, does the coin collapse into one outcome. Another feature is entanglement. Imagine two violin strings tuned to the same pitch. You pluck one, and the other begins to vibrate in sympathy. even if it sits across the room. Quantum entanglement is even stranger. Two particles can become linked so that their fates mirror each other instantly, no matter how far apart they are. Change one here on Earth, and its partner could respond in the orbit of the Moon. It is as if the universe has invisible threads binding particles together in a secret duet. Then there is tunneling. In the classical world, if you throw a ball at a wall, it either bounces back or breaks through. In the quantum world, a particle can slip through barriers without breaking them, appearing on the other side as though it had whispered past a closed door. The everyday comparison might be a ghost slipping through a locked gate, but in truth, it is not magic. It is simply the way the mathematics of waves works at small scales. These features, superposition, entanglement, and tunneling, are not speculation. They have been tested and confirmed again and again. They sit at the foundation of technologies we use every day. The tiny chips inside your phone and computer rely on quantum rules to guide the flow of electrons. Medical scanners called magnetic resonance imagers exploit quantum properties of atomic spins to produce images of your body. Even the light from lasers, soft and steady, is a carefully harnessed quantum effect. But while these effects are normal in physics labs and silicon chips, the idea that they could shape something as warm and messy as the human brain has long seemed unlikely. The brain is not a vacuum chamber. It is not cooled to near absolute zero to preserve delicate states. It is warm, around 37 degrees Celsius. It is wet, filled with blood and fluid. It is noisy, buzzing with chemical chatter. In such an environment, quantum states would be expected to vanish almost instantly, dissolving in less than a trillionth of a second. That process is called decoherence. A helpful image is that of footprints drawn in sand at the edge of the sea. Quantum states are like delicate footprints. Decoherence is the incoming tide that washes them away before anyone can notice they were there. And yet, despite this challenge, biologists have discovered places in nature where quantum rules are not erased but harnessed. In photosynthesis, energy captured from sunlight does not travel step by step like a parcel handed down a line. Instead, it spreads out like a shimmering wave across many possible routes, then collapses into the most efficient one, ensuring plants thrive. In migratory birds, certain proteins in their eyes seem to exploit quantum entanglement, letting them sense the Earth's magnetic field as if they carried an invisible compass. In our sense of smell, molecules may be identified not just by their shape, but by their vibration, a quantum fingerprint that tells the nose whether something is rose, mint, or smoke. These discoveries show that quantum effects can survive and even play essential roles inside the warmth and wetness of life. They are not fragile curiosities locked in physics experiments. They are woven into the fabric of biology. If such delicate effects can guide sunlight in leaves, steer birds across continents, and sharpen our sense of smell, then perhaps the human brain has also found a way to nurture them. And if so, then the hard problem of consciousness might not be solved by circuits alone. It might require us to look deeper into the quantum soil beneath the neural forest. Think for a moment about what this would mean. If superposition exists in the brain, then perhaps your thoughts briefly hold many possibilities before collapsing into a single chosen experience, like a shimmering cloud choosing a raindrop. If entanglement exists in the brain, then perhaps different regions share information instantly, knitting separate perceptions into a single seamless awareness, like threads woven into a fabric. If tunneling exists in the brain, then perhaps signals can pass through barriers that classical physics would declare closed, whispering across distances too wide for ordinary chemistry. The possibilities are both fascinating and unsettling. They invite us to imagine the mind not just as a machine of cells and signals, but as a living quantum instrument, an orchestra tuned to the deep rules of the cosmos. Our quiet exploration now turns toward this very idea. That deep inside your neurons are tiny tubular structures, like microscopic bamboo flutes that may provide the stage for such quantum performances. If consciousness arises from these structures, then each moment of awareness could be the sound of the universe playing through them. From here, the trail of clues leads us gently into the proposal known as ORC-OR, short for Orchestrated Objective Reduction, the theory that microtubules in the brain host quantum states that collapse into conscious moments. The path now carries us into a quieter, more skeptical landscape. For every bold idea about quantum consciousness, there have been careful voices reminding us of the obstacles. Science grows strong when it welcomes doubt, and so to understand this story fully, we need to pause with the objections. Imagine again the fragile footprints in sand at the shoreline. A wave can wash them away almost instantly. Quantum states, the delicate superpositions and entanglements we just explored, are like those footprints. They last only as long as they are shielded from disturbance. The problem is that the human brain is not a still shoreline. It is a bustling marketplace filled with chemical chatter, heat, and constant motion. In physics terms, this challenge is called decoherence. It means that the gentle quantum possibilities collapse into ordinary classical outcomes very quickly, long before they could shape something as large and slow as a thought. In the early 1990s, a physicist named Max Tegmark calculated how fast this collapse would happen inside a neuron. His numbers were startling. He suggested that any quantum state would decohere in less than 1/1,000,000,000th of a second. That is faster than a hummingbird can flap its wings, faster than the flicker of light across your eye. In other words, far too fast to matter for consciousness, which unfolds in rhythms closer to tens of cycles per second. Tegmark's conclusion was simple. The brain is too warm, too wet, and too noisy to sustain quantum coherence. He described it as trying to keep a snowflake from melting in the middle of a bonfire. The brain's temperature is around 37 degrees Celsius. It is bathed in fluid. Its molecules are constantly colliding. Under such conditions, he argued, any quantum effect would vanish before it could make the slightest difference. This view became the mainstream consensus. Most neuroscientists continued their work assuming consciousness must be explained with classical biology, networks of neurons, electrical spikes, and chemical messengers. Quantum mechanics, they thought, was relevant only for tiny isolated particles, not for living brains. But not everyone agreed. Some researchers pointed out that Tegmark's calculations relied on simplified models, treating neurons as if they were bare particles in a featureless soup. Real biology, they argued, might be far more clever. Life has had billions of years to learn how to protect delicate processes. Perhaps microtubules, those tiny bamboo-like structures inside cells, provide natural shielding. Perhaps their lattice-like geometry creates patterns where coherence lasts longer than expected. Others noted that decoherence times are not the only measure of relevance. Even fleeting quantum effects might be amplified by biological mechanisms, just as a faint whisper can become a song if it is carried by the right resonant chamber. In photosynthesis, for instance, quantum coherence may last only for fractions of a second, but that is long enough to guide energy efficiently through the molecular maze of a leaf. Still, the critics remain important. They remind us to be cautious, to separate what is plausible from what is proven, and their caution leads to an essential truth. If quantum effects are to matter in the brain, they must not only exist but also endure long enough and influence neural firing strongly enough to make a real difference. Without that, the theory risks being beautiful but empty. To bring this idea closer to home, imagine trying to build a campfire on a windy night. You strike a match, but the flame dies, immediately in the gusts. For the fire to grow, you need some shelter, a ring of stones perhaps, or a hollow in the earth. The brain, if it truly uses quantum processes, must have its own kind of shelter. Microtubules are proposed to be that shelter. Tubular scaffolds that might shield delicate states from the noisy bustle outside. Even so, the challenge remains immense. Maintaining coherence in a warm, fluid environment is like trying to keep a soap bubble intact inside a storm. You need extraordinary conditions, and biology must have discovered them if this theory is true. That is why so much research has focused not only on what quantum mechanics allows, but on what biological evidence actually shows. Here is where the story becomes more intriguing. A group led by Anirban Bandyopadhyay in Japan reported that microtubules can resonate at frequencies in the trillion cycles per second range, and that these oscillations may persist far longer than expected. If correct, this suggests that microtubules are not just inert scaffolding, but active structures capable of supporting coherence. It is as if the bamboo flutes inside your neurons hum with hidden songs, faint but real. Skeptics respond that these findings need replication, and that resonance does not automatically equal quantum computation. They caution against leaping from oscillations to awareness. But even they acknowledge that biology has surprised us before, and it may do so again. So the debate continues. On one side, critics argue that the brain is too messy, too hot, too quick to decohere. On the other, proponents believe that life may have evolved hidden strategies to preserve quantum whispers in the storm. The truth may lie somewhere we have yet to glimpse, waiting in experiments still to come. As we rest with these doubts, it is worth noticing how they sharpen the mystery rather than diminish it. If the brain can indeed nurture coherence against the odds, that would be astonishing. If it cannot, then consciousness must be explained by other means, and that too would be astonishing. Either way, the wonder remains. From here, our gentle exploration will step into nature's quiet hints, examples from plants, animals, and even our own senses, that quantum effects not only survive but play central roles in life. These precedents may help us imagine how the brain, against all odds, could weave them into the tapestry of awareness. Our quiet exploration now turns to the living world itself, where nature has been quietly performing experiments for billions of years. If we wish to know whether quantum effects could play a role in the brain, it helps to ask a simpler question first. Do they play a role in life at all? For a long time, scientists thought the answer was no. Quantum phenomena were believed to belong only to the fragile world of isolated particles, trapped in vacuum chambers and chilled close to absolute zero. Life, by contrast, was seen as too warm, too wet, too chaotic to host such delicate effects. But in recent decades, evidence has gathered that this assumption was wrong. Let us begin with something familiar: sunlight falling on a leaf. When a photon of light is captured by the green pigment of chlorophyll, its energy must be transferred into the plant's machinery, where it can be converted into sugar and stored as food. You might picture this process like a parcel being passed hand to hand along a line of workers, each step wasting a little energy. But in truth, plants are far more clever. Experiments using ultrafast lasers have shown that the captured energy spreads out as a quantum wave, exploring many possible routes at once. Rather than stumbling randomly, it samples every path simultaneously, then collapses into the most efficient one. This process is called quantum coherence, and it allows plants to channel sunlight with near-perfect efficiency. It is as if the leaf does not simply guess at which path is best. It tries them all in parallel and then chooses. This discovery startled scientists. Quantum coherence, surviving inside a living sunlit room temperature leaf, was not supposed to be possible. And yet there it was, helping to power the green world all around us. Another example comes from the long journeys of migratory birds. Every year, tiny songbirds fly across continents, somehow navigating invisible paths through the sky. How do they find their way? It turns out they may be using quantum entanglement inside their eyes. The clue lies in a protein called cryptochrome. When light strikes it, pairs of electrons are produced in what is called a singlet state, meaning their spins are entangled. The way these electrons separate and recombine depends on the angle of the Earth's magnetic field. This creates a faint signal that the bird can detect, giving it a built-in compass. To imagine it, picture two dancers spinning in perfect sync. Even when separated, they remain coordinated, and their steps shift depending on the direction of the stage lights. In this way, entanglement in a humble protein may guide birds across oceans and mountains, their tiny brains tuned to the geometry of the planet itself. Our own sense of smell may also carry a quantum signature. For decades, scientists assumed that the nose works like a lock and key. Each odour molecule has a shape that fits into a receptor, which then triggers a signal. But some sense puzzled researchers. Molecules with almost identical shapes can smell very different. Others with very different shapes can smell strangely similar. An alternative explanation suggests that receptors in the nose detect not only the shape, but also the vibration of molecules. Imagine striking two bells of similar size. They look alike, but one rings high and clear, the other low and resonant. In the same way, molecules may vibrate at different frequencies, and quantum tunneling of electrons across the receptor can sense these vibrations. Thus, the smell of a rose and the smell of smoke are distinguished not just by geometry, but by the song of their quantum vibrations. These examples, leaves capturing light, birds crossing continents, noses discerning scents, paint a picture of nature as a quiet quantum engineer. Life, it seems, has not only tolerated quantum effects, but woven them into essential functions. What does this mean for consciousness? It shows that quantum phenomena can, in fact, survive and even thrive inside warm and wet biology. The old objection, that delicate states cannot exist in such environments, is weakened. If plants can do it, if birds can do it, if even our noses may rely on it, then perhaps the brain too has discovered ways to protect and harness the quantum realm. Think of it as a hint, a soft clue left by nature. The same way a faint trail in the forest tells you others have walked this way before, these discoveries suggest that quantum pathways exist inside life. And if awareness is the most mysterious function of all, it may have found its own path through the same forest. It is worth pausing here to notice the mood these findings create. They do not prove quantum consciousness. They do not tell us exactly how the brain uses such effects, but they whisper possibility. They remind us that the universe does not draw sharp boundaries between physics and biology, or between atoms and awareness. Everything is woven from the same fabric, and sometimes that fabric reveals unexpected patterns. So as we lie here, reflecting, imagine that your own mind may be resting on a foundation shared with the green of leaves, the wings of birds, and the fragrance of flowers. It is a thought both humbling and comforting, that consciousness, whatever its ultimate source, is part of a larger story of quantum life. From here, the trail of clues leads us gently to the structures inside your very neurons that may host these hidden processes, the microtubules, tiny tubular frameworks that may act as quantum instruments. If quantum effects can guide sunlight and magnetism, perhaps they can also shape thought, and so our exploration turns quietly to the bamboo flutes of the brain. From here, the story opens into the hidden architecture of your own cells. Beneath the familiar world of neurons firing and signals leaping across synapses lies a quieter structure, almost always overlooked, but perhaps carrying secrets far deeper than anyone imagined. Inside every neuron, as in nearly every cell of your body, runs a scaffolding of tiny hollow tubes called microtubules. You can picture them as countless slender bamboo flutes, each one only a few nanometers wide, so small that tens of thousands could fit across the thickness of a single human hair. These bamboo flutes form part of the cytoskeleton, the cell's inner framework. They hold the cell's shape, guide nutrients, and even act as tracks for tiny motor proteins that walk along them, carrying cargo. They are both the beams and highways of the microscopic world. To most biologists, microtubules are beautiful but ordinary, part of the construction crew of the cell. But to a physician named Stuart Hemroff and a physicist named Roger Penrose, they seemed like more. In the 1990s, they began to wonder whether these little bamboo flutes could be instruments for consciousness itself. Their idea, known as OR, short for Orchestrated Objective Reduction, begins with the possibility that quantum states may be sheltered inside microtubules. The walls of these tubes are built from repeating protein units, tubulin molecules, arranged in a lattice. Hameroff proposed that these repeating structures create orderly patterns where delicate quantum states might last longer than usual. Penrose added a twist. He argued that quantum states are not just erased by noise, but sometimes collapse on their own because of the fundamental instability of space-time itself. Put simply, the OR idea is that microtubules act like protected concert halls where quantum superpositions can build up. Then, after a brief moment, these states collapse, not randomly but orchestrated by the brain's own biological rhythms, into a single outcome. Each collapse, they suggested, corresponds to a conscious moment. To make this less abstract, think of a film reel. A movie is made of still frames shown in rapid succession. Each frame is a discrete picture, but played quickly they blend into a fluid experience. In the same way, Penrose and Hameroff imagined consciousness as a sequence of collapses, perhaps about 40 times every second, merging into the flowing awareness you know as your mind. In this picture, microtubules are not simply structural supports. They are bamboo flutes on which the universe itself plays notes of awareness. Each orchestrated collapse is like a breath of music, a single flash of lived experience, and together they weave the continuous melody of consciousness. Now, this is a bold proposal, and even its creators acknowledge it remains speculative. But it is worth slowing down to feel what it suggests. If awareness arises from orchestrated collapses of quantum states inside microtubules, then your mind is not just a byproduct of neurons passing electrical signals. It is a series of quantum events woven into the very geometry of reality. This idea connects the inner world of the brain to the outer world of physics. Penrose, in particular, argued that when a quantum state collapses inside microtubules, it does so in harmony with the fundamental fabric of space-time. In that sense, each conscious moment is not just personal, it is also cosmic. Your awareness, however private it feels, may be linked to the quiet tremors of the universe itself. To picture this, imagine lying in bed while the wind outside rustles the trees. Each rustle is local. It happens here, in this tree, at this moment, and yet the breeze itself is part of a vast atmospheric system covering the planet. Your conscious moment, in the Orchard theory, is like that rustle. It is your own, but it is also tied to the universal fabric that allows it. For Hameroff, the clinical anesthesiologist, this proposal also connected back to his everyday work. Anesthetics, those humble drugs that can switch off consciousness, seem to act by binding to tubulin proteins, the very building blocks of microtubules. To him, this was more than coincidence. Perhaps the way anesthetics silence awareness is by disrupting quantum processes inside these bamboo flutes. For Penrose, the mathematician and physicist, the appeal was different. He was seeking an answer to what he called the non-computable nature of consciousness. To him, no algorithm, no classical computer program could explain the richness of subjective experience. He suspected that consciousness required new physics, something beyond ordinary computation. Orchard offered a possible route, because each collapse was not the result of calculation but of fundamental physical law. Together, their collaboration wove biology and physics into a single speculative tapestry. Orchard became both famous and controversial. Critics dismissed it as too exotic, arguing that no evidence yet proved microtubulars could sustain coherence. Supporters found it inspiring, a rare attempt to link the mystery of awareness with the mystery of quantum reality. Whether true or not, the imagery is haunting. The thought that deep inside your neurons, countless bamboo flutes may be humming softly, carrying quantum whispers that rise and fall 40 times each second, blending into the song of your mind. As we drift with this image, we can allow ourselves to feel its gentleness. Awareness is not just a stream, but a rhythm, a sequence of notes. Each collapse is a frame, each frame a moment of being, and together they form the living film of your life. The trail of clues leads us now toward this rhythm itself, the idea that consciousness may pulse in quiet frames, flickering like a movie reel. From here, our exploration continues into the cadence of conscious experience, where collapses may form the very heartbeat of awareness. If we follow the thread a little further, the idea of or unfolds into something rhythmic and almost musical. Penrose and Hameroff proposed that the orchestrated collapses inside microtubules don't happen randomly, but in a repeating pattern. According to their calculations, a conscious collapse might occur about 40 times in every second. That means in one heartbeat, perhaps 2 or 3 conscious frames pass by, and in a single minute, thousands have already flickered into being. You might think of this like a film projector. A movie is made not of continuous motion, but of individual frames, each still picture shown in rapid sequence. Show them slowly, and you see the flicker. Show them fast enough, and the flicker vanishes into a seamless flow. Your conscious awareness in this view is not a single continuous stream, but a series of frames, tiny flashes of experience that your mind weaves together into the fluid story of you. It's a strange thought. Right now, as you listen, you feel continuous. You feel unbroken. And yet, under the surface, perhaps your awareness is pulsing, like a light blinking too fast for you to notice. It's like the electricity powering a lamp. You don't perceive the alternating current, the constant switching back and forth, because the bulb glows steadily. In the same way, consciousness may be flickering in quiet rhythms, too fast and too smooth for your mind to detect. This proposed rhythm, around 40 pulses per second, matches what neuroscientists call the gamma frequency of brain activity. Electrodes placed on the scalp can detect electrical oscillations, and one of the strongest correlations with attention, memory, and conscious thought is this gamma rhythm. When you focus, when you perceive clearly, when you bring separate sensations into one unified experience, your brain often hums in this band of activity. Orr suggests that this is not just a correlation, but a window onto the actual cadence of conscious frames. To picture it, imagine a lantern with 40 tiny flames inside, each one sparking in turn. The glow appears steady, but beneath it lies a dance of many sparks. Or think of a drummer tapping 40 beats in a second, not something your ears could follow as individual notes, but blending into a single roll of sound. The idea of conscious frames also touches an old puzzle called the binding problem. In the brain, vision is processed in one area, hearing in another, touch in yet another, and yet your awareness is not fragmented. When you watch a bird sing on a branch, you don't experience the sight and the sound as separate. They arrive together in one coherent moment. How does the brain weave these signals into unity? Orr offers a possibility. Perhaps entanglement within and between microtubules allows many signals to be bound into a single state, which then collapses into a definite conscious frame. Like threads woven on a loom, separate strands of sight, sound, and touch may be entwined before the frame is chosen. When the collapse happens, the result is one unified picture of the world, not scattered fragments. Another part of the story is how these frames are synchronized across the brain. Your mind is not the product of a single neuron, but of billions. For frames to create one experience, many regions must be orchestrated together. Here, gap junctions enter the picture. These are tiny channels connecting neurons directly, allowing signals to flow without the usual chemical delays. In auteur, gap junctions are imagined as the bridges that let microtubules across different neurons hum in synchrony, keeping the orchestra on the same beat. Think of a choir singing together. Each singer has their own voice, but they need to follow the same rhythm. Gap junctions are like the hand gestures of the conductor, keeping everyone aligned. Without them, the choir would dissolve into noise. With them, many voices merge into a single song. Whether or not this picture is correct, it offers a poetic way to reflect on your own experience of being. Instead of a continuous stream, your mind may be more like a film of many frames, or a song of many beats, and each frame, each beat, may be tied to the collapse of a quantum state inside the bamboo flutes of your neurons. Some people find this thought unsettling, as if it fragments awareness into mechanical ticks, but there is another way to see it, as a celebration of rhythm. Just as music arises not from a single note but from notes in time, your consciousness may arise from the rhythm of frames. The continuity you feel is the melody, not the individual beats. Pause for a moment now, and imagine your awareness as a lantern gently flickering 40 times each second. You cannot see the flicker because it is too fast, but you can sense the glow. Each flicker is a moment of being, a tiny spark that collapses possibilities into the definite reality of now. And then another, and another, weaving into the steady flow you call your life. From here, our journey drifts toward a challenge. If these quantum frames are real, how do they survive in the warmth and noise of the brain? Critics still argue that delicate states should vanish instantly, yet proponents point to the bamboo flutes themselves, microtubules, as potential shelters, and to experiments hinting at resonances within them. The trail of clues now leads us gently into this challenge. The question of whether coherence can last in the living brain, and how fragile quantum patterns might endure long enough to carry the rhythm of consciousness. Our quiet path now carries us to one of the most stubborn obstacles in the entire theory, the problem of keeping quantum states alive inside the living brain. For auteur to work, the bamboo flutes of your neurons, the microtubules, would need to shelter delicate quantum superpositions long enough to matter. But critics argue that in a warm, wet, and noisy brain, these states would collapse almost instantly, long before they could orchestrate anything as grand as consciousness. The name for this obstacle is decoherence. It describes the way fragile quantum possibilities are destroyed when they interact with their environment. Think again of footprints in fresh snow. Left untouched, they last for hours, maybe days. But if the wind rises, or the sun warms the surface, those crisp shapes melt away into nothing. Quantum states are like those footprints. They last only as long as they are protected from disturbance. In the 1990s, the physicist Max Tegmark ran calculations to estimate just how long coherence could survive inside a neuron. His result was sobering. According to his model, any quantum state would decohere in less than a trillionth of a second. That is 1,000,000 times faster than the blink of an eye, too quick for any conscious process to notice. He concluded that quantum effects could not possibly play a role in thought. The brain, he argued, is simply too hot, too crowded, too chaotic. Trying to keep quantum states alive there is like trying to preserve a soap bubble in a storm. This criticism is still widely cited. It gave many neuroscientists confidence to keep their focus on classical explanations, networks of neurons, chemical messengers, electrical spikes. But Penrose, Hameroff, and others felt that Tegmark's numbers oversimplified the true complexity of biology. After all, life has a remarkable talent for creating shelters where fragile processes can endure. Leaves manage to protect coherence while channeling sunlight. Birds somehow preserve entanglement long enough to sense the Earth's magnetic field. Could microtubules have evolved similar tricks? Proponents suggest that the lattice structure of tubulin proteins inside microtubules may act like a shield. The repeating patterns could create pockets where coherence survives longer than expected, like delicate ice patterns forming inside a crystal shell. Some even propose that microtubules might host resonances, vibrations at extremely high frequencies that stabilize quantum states against their noisy surroundings. Experiments have begun to explore this possibility. A group led by Anirban Bandyopadhyay reported that microtubulars can resonate in the terahertz range. That means trillions of cycles per second, and that these oscillations might persist for surprisingly long durations. If correct, this suggests that microtubules are not passive beams, but active structures humming with vibrations. It is as if the bamboo flutes inside your neurons carry hidden songs, faint but enduring, that could protect coherence long enough to influence brain activity. Of course, these findings are still debated. Skeptics caution that resonances do not automatically mean quantum computation. A wine glass hums when you run a finger around its rim, but that does not make it a quantum computer. Replication and verification are needed. Yet the fact that microtubules show such complex dynamics keeps the door open. The soap bubble in the storm may not burst as quickly as we feared if biology has wrapped it in just the right shelter. To soften the image further, imagine a delicate spider's web strung between two branches. In an open field, the first gust of wind would tear it apart. But hidden in a quiet corner of the garden, the web can survive for days, catching morning dew, shimmering in the sun. Microtubules may be the hidden corners of the cellular world, providing a quiet nook where quantum threads can hold. And so we return to the heart of the debate. On one side, critics say decoherence destroys quantum states before they can matter. On the other, proponents suggest that microtubules create protected pockets where coherence lasts long enough to orchestrate conscious moments. The truth is not yet known. But what makes the question so captivating is that either answer is profound. If decoherence truly rules out quantum consciousness, then we must face the mystery of awareness with classical tools alone, and that is no less astonishing. If coherence does survive, then the mind may indeed be linked to the deep physics of reality. As we let these thoughts settle, notice how they slow the pace of the story. The debate is not just about numbers or models, it is about whether life itself has learned to shelter the fragile whispers of the universe. If it has, then every conscious moment you feel may be supported by delicate patterns surviving against all odds, like frost lingering in the shadows long after the sun has risen. The trail of clues now turns toward experiments that try to probe these possibilities directly. Scientists have begun to shine light on microtubules, to test how they resonate, and to observe how anesthetics silence awareness by binding to the very proteins that build these flutes. From these studies comes the idea of a consciousness fingerprint, a measurable trace that appears when awareness is present and fades when it is gone. That is where our journey drifts next, as we listen for the laboratory echoes of mind. The trail of clues leads us now into the laboratories where scientists are searching for signs that the bamboo flutes of your neurons may truly hum with quantum melodies. Ideas like Orkor cannot stand on imagination alone. They need experiments, tangible hints that something unusual is happening inside the living brain. Over the past 2 decades, researchers have begun to look more closely at microtubules, shining light on them, vibrating them with sound, and even observing how anesthetics silence awareness when they touch these delicate structures. One of the first approaches was to see how microtubules respond to light. Scientists discovered that when certain wavelengths shine on tubulin, the protein that builds microtubules, the lattice seems to resonate, producing oscillations at astonishingly high frequencies. These oscillations occur not just millions, not just billions, but trillions of times per second. If you try to imagine this, picture the fastest drum roll you have ever heard, then multiply it by 1 billion. The rhythm becomes so quick it is less like sound and more like a constant hum. The fact that these resonances appear at all is remarkable. It suggests that microtubules are not merely rigid support beams, but dynamic structures capable of sustaining complex vibrations. In the Orshauer model, these vibrations may help microtubules shelter quantum states long enough to matter. It is as if the bamboo flutes are not silent, but quietly playing inaudible notes, shaping the orchestra of your mind. Sound has also been used to probe these possibilities. In some experiments, researchers exposed microtubules to ultrasound, a form of vibration at frequencies far above what human ears can hear. Astonishingly, certain patterns of ultrasound seem to alter cellular behavior, almost as if the microtubules were responding like instruments tuned to specific pitches. This has led to speculation that carefully applied sound waves might even nudge microtubules toward coherence, perhaps opening pathways for therapeutic uses in the future. Imagine for a moment the idea of consciousness itself being gently tuned by sound, like a violin string adjusted by a careful hand. But perhaps the most striking experimental clue comes from the world of anesthesiology, the study of how to switch consciousness off and on. Every day in hospitals, anesthetics are used to silence awareness, allowing surgery to take place without pain or memory. For over a century, it was a mystery how these simple molecules, some of them remarkably small and chemically plain, could so completely erase consciousness while leaving most other bodily functions intact. Hameroff, being an anesthesiologist himself, found this puzzle central. He and others observed that anesthetics seemed to bind specifically to tubulin proteins inside microtubules. In other words, the very building blocks of the bamboo flutes appear to be the target. If that is true, then perhaps consciousness disappears under anesthesia because the quantum processes in microtubules are disrupted. Even more curious is that stabilizing microtubules, keeping them from unraveling, can sometimes delay the loss of consciousness. It is as if strengthening the bamboo flutes helps them resist the silencing effect. This does not prove or, but it suggests that microtubules are not irrelevant to awareness. They may sit closer to its core than most classical theories allow. These findings have led to the idea of a consciousness fingerprint. If quantum coherence is tied to awareness, then perhaps it can be measured indirectly. When people are awake, their brains might show certain subtle oscillations, resonances, or patterns that fade during anesthesia and return upon waking. In recent years, some researchers have reported evidence consistent with this. Coherence appears stronger when people are conscious, weaker when they are not. The details are debated and replication is needed, but the possibility is enticing, that the presence or absence of consciousness leaves a detectable trace in the rhythms of the brain. To put this in everyday terms, imagine a radio signal. When the radio station is on, the air is filled with coherent waves carrying music. When the station goes off, the waves dissolve into static. Your awareness, in this analogy, is like the music. The microtubules may be the antennae, and their quantum coherence the signal. Under anesthesia, the signal fades into static. When you awaken, it returns, and the music plays again. None of these experiments prove the theory. Each can be challenged, each can be explained in other ways. But taken together, they form a suggestive pattern. Microtubules resonate with light and sound. They interact with anesthetics in ways that seem directly tied to awareness, and coherence appears to wax and wane with consciousness itself. These hints are not the final word, but they are footprints worth following. As we drift with these thoughts, notice how the story is shifting. At first, quantum consciousness seemed only like a philosophical dream. Then we saw that nature already uses quantum effects in photosynthesis, in bird navigation, and in smell. Now, experiments are beginning to point toward the very structures inside your neurons. It is as if the trail is narrowing, guiding us from the vast landscape of speculation to the intimate interior of the cell. The bridge we cross next will take us further into these hints. If coherence really fades during unconsciousness and returns on waking, then perhaps we can measure the boundaries of awareness itself. In the next step of our journey, we will explore these quantum fingerprints more closely, the fading and return of coherence as consciousness slips away and comes back again. The trail of clues leads us now into one of the most delicate frontiers, the attempt to measure when awareness appears and when it fades. If all cure and similar ideas are correct, then consciousness may leave subtle traces in the rhythms of the brain, traces that can be followed as someone drifts into anesthesia or wakes again. Some call this possibility a quantum fingerprint of awareness. Imagine lying in a hospital bed, drifting into unconsciousness under anesthesia. To the outside observer, your body still breathes, your heart still beats, your reflexes may even respond. But something essential has vanished. The glow of experience, the inner movie of self. The question scientists ask is this: can we see, in the brain's activity, the difference between a body that is awake and aware, and a body that is awake but empty? Researchers have tried to answer this by looking at the coherence of brain signals. When you are conscious, many parts of your brain seem to hum together, like instruments in an orchestra following the same sheet of music. When you're unconscious, the harmony dissolves into disconnected rhythms, like scattered musicians playing alone. If microtubules are indeed sustaining quantum states, then their coherence may rise and fall with this orchestra. One line of evidence comes from anesthesia itself. Studies show that under anesthesia, certain oscillations in the brain fade or lose synchronization, and that when people awaken, those patterns return. To make this vivid, picture a lantern glowing with many tiny candles inside. When anesthesia takes hold, the candles do not all go out at once. Instead, their flames lose rhythm, flickering apart until the glow no longer feels whole. When consciousness returns, the candles catch again, and the lantern shines with unified light. Another intriguing hint comes from a small study at Trinity College Dublin. Researchers there reported signs that pairs of brains might exhibit subtle entanglement-like correlations when engaged in certain tasks. The details are controversial, and the findings need replication, but if true, it would suggest that human brains can show quantum-linked patterns even across individuals. Imagine two harps standing in different rooms. Touch one string, and the other hums faintly in sympathy. Whether this effect is truly quantum or some other hidden connection remains unknown, but the possibility is striking. Still, it is important to move carefully here. These studies are small, their results debated. Scientists are quick to remind us that unusual patterns in brain signals do not automatically prove quantum mechanics at work. They might reflect ordinary biological processes we do not yet fully understand. But even so, the idea of a quantum fingerprint remains enticing, that we might one day measure not just the presence of electrical activity in the brain, but the subtle coherence that marks awareness itself. If this fingerprint is real, then consciousness may be less like a light switch and more like a radio signal. When tuned, it fills the air with music. When mistuned, it dissolves into static. Anesthesia, sleep, and coma may be times when the signal weakens, when coherence fades. Awakening may be when the tuning is restored, the hidden orchestra resuming its performance. It is worth pausing here to feel the softness of this image. Your awareness, the simple fact that you're hearing these words now, may be like music sustained by delicate coherence inside your brain. When that coherence dissolves, the music falls silent. When coherence returns, the music plays again, as if nothing had interrupted. This also helps us reflect on just how fragile awareness is. It can be suspended by a few molecules of anesthetic, resumed as if nothing happened. It can fade in sleep and return with waking, and yet, for all its fragility, it feels to us like the most certain thing, the ground of our very being. The paradox is almost poetic. Consciousness is both the most delicate and the most undeniable fact of existence. What experiments like these show us is not certainty, but direction. They remind us that there may be measurable traces of awareness, patterns that mark its presence. They suggest that the line between conscious and unconscious is not sharp, but gradual, a dimming and brightening of coherence rather than an on-off switch. From here, the path of our story will widen again. If conscious moments are truly frames collapsing 40 times per second, and if these frames leave fingerprints that fade with anesthesia and return on waking, then we might begin to see consciousness not as a constant flow, but as a rhythm that can be measured, a song that can falter and rise again. In the next step of our journey, we will reflect on what these frames mean for how we perceive reality itself. The possibility that consciousness is not continuous but composed of discrete flashes, stitched together like the frames of a film. The path now carries us deeper into one of the most fascinating consequences of the Orc-Or idea. The suggestion that consciousness is not continuous, but arrives in discrete moments, like the flickering frames of a film. When you look around your room, or listen to the sound of your own breathing, it feels like a steady stream of awareness. Yet many scientists, even outside the quantum consciousness camp, have long wondered whether perception is actually more like a series of snapshots. Experiments in psychology hint at this possibility. People often respond to visual stimuli in bursts, and brain rhythms appear in repeating cycles rather than a steady hum. Orc-Or folds this into its framework, suggesting that each orchestrated collapse inside microtubules corresponds to one conscious moment, a frame in the inner movie of your life. If each collapse happens about 40 times in a second, then every second of your experience contains roughly 40 separate frames. Too fast for you to notice individually, but together forming the seamless glow of awareness. It is like the way a light bulb powered by alternating current flickers back and forth many times per second, yet appears steady to the human eye. Or the way a drummer's rapid roll blends into a continuous sound. This perspective offers a way to approach one of the most enduring puzzles in neuroscience, the binding problem. The brain processes vision in one area, sound in another, touch in yet another, and higher concepts in still other regions. How does all this distributed activity combine into the unified moment you call now? If perception were continuous, it would be hard to explain. But if consciousness is composed of frames, each one corresponding to a collapse of quantum states, then each frame could serve as a unifier. Before the collapse, different regions may be entangled, their information spread out like threads crossing a loom. At the moment of collapse, the entangled state chooses a single outcome, weaving those threads into a coherent picture. What was scattered becomes one. What was separate becomes stitched together. To imagine this, picture an old-fashioned loom. Threads of many colours are stretched in parallel, separate and unconnected. The shuttle moves back and forth, interlacing them into cloth. Consciousness, in this metaphor, is like the cloth itself, a coherent weave emerging from threads that alone would be disjointed. Each orchestrated collapse is a pass of the shuttle, binding distributed activity into a unified moment. This weaving may also explain why awareness feels indivisible. You cannot normally split your perception into isolated fragments. You may shift attention, but the present moment always arrives whole, sight, sound, feeling, thought, all together. If entanglement really does allow distributed information to collapse into one frame, then the wholeness of experience makes sense. There is a gentle beauty in thinking of your life as a sequence of frames. Each one is fleeting, like a raindrop falling on the surface of a pond, but together they create ripples that spread across time, forming the story of you. Awareness is not a solid beam, but a delicate flicker, stitched together by rhythm. This idea also carries profound implications for how we see reality itself. If consciousness is selecting frames from quantum possibilities, then what you experience is not simply a readout of fixed events. It is a chosen path among many, collapsed into definiteness by the very act of awareness. In that sense, every conscious moment is an act of creation, drawing one possibility into being while countless others fade away. Pause here and let that thought rest gently in your mind. The redness of the pillow beside you, the sound of your breath, the warmth of your blanket. These may be the outcomes of quantum collapses unfolding in rhythm. Your experience of now is not just a passive reception, but an active weaving, a constant crystallization of possibility into reality. Some scientists find this idea poetic but unnecessary. They argue that the gamma rhythm of about 40 pulses per second can be explained by ordinary circuits of neurons without invoking quantum mechanics. Others reply that gamma alone does not solve the binding problem, nor the hard problem of why subjective experience arises at all. The debate continues, but what matters for us here is the imagery it offers, that awareness may be a sequence of quiet flickers, frames of being stitched together into a seamless flow. If you want to feel this more directly, try a small mental exercise. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world flickering softly, not in harsh strobe flashes, but in gentle pulses, like fireflies glowing in a meadow, 40 times each second. Too quick to count, but together forming a luminous field. This may be what your mind is doing all the time, fireflies of consciousness glowing and fading, weaving into the continuous glow you call your life. And so, from the bamboo flutes of your neurons, quantum states may collapse into rhythmic frames. From these frames, awareness is woven. From this weaving, the seamless glow of your experience arises. Our quiet exploration now turns toward another window into this mystery, the way anesthesia and sleep interrupt the rhythm. If consciousness truly flickers in quantum frames, then drugs that silence awareness, or natural states of rest, may work by disturbing that rhythm, dimming the fireflies until the meadow goes dark. The path now leads us into the study of sleep and anesthesia, where the key to awareness may be found in the very moments when it disappears. Our quiet exploration now turns toward the moments when consciousness vanishes. For all the complexity of theories, there is something almost magical in how awareness can be switched off and then switched back on again, with no memory of the gap in between. This happens every day in operating rooms when anesthetics are used, and every night when you drift into sleep. If the Aucture theory is right, then these states may reveal how delicate quantum rhythms in your brain are silenced, and how they return. Anesthesia is one of the strangest discoveries in medicine. For centuries, surgeons worked without it, relying only on alcohol, opium, or sheer restraint. Then, in the mid-19th century, doctors found that simple gases such as ether or nitrous oxide could erase awareness completely, while leaving breathing and heartbeat intact. Later came chloroform, and then modern anesthetics, many of them small, unassuming molecules. The mystery is how something so simple can turn off the most complex phenomenon we know, consciousness. Heimroth, as an anesthesiologist, often watched this transformation in real time. A patient would be speaking, laughing, anxious or calm. Then, after inhaling a small dose of anesthetic gas, the light of awareness would dim and vanish, sometimes within seconds. The body still responded to reflexes, but the mind was gone. Later, when the gas wore off, awareness returned as if a lantern had been relit. The patient would have no memory of the missing time. It was as though consciousness had been paused. This pause intrigued researchers. They discovered that many anesthetics seem to bind specifically to tubulin proteins, the very molecules that build the bamboo flutes of microtubules. If true, this means anesthetics silence awareness not by shutting down the entire brain, but by disrupting the quantum processes inside these tiny structures. In other words, the orchestra of consciousness may still be present, but the instruments themselves are muted. Even more curious, when microtubules are stabilized, made more rigid or less likely to unravel, awareness sometimes resists fading. It is as if the bamboo flutes have been reinforced, and the anesthetic's attempt to silence them becomes less effective. This offers a tantalizing clue that the seat of consciousness may indeed lie in these structures. Sleep provides another window into the mystery. Every night you lie down and close your eyes, and the vivid world of awareness gently dissolves. At first, you may pass through drifting thoughts, half-formed dreams, or flashes of imagery. Then comes deeper sleep, where awareness is almost completely gone. Hours later, it returns, often with the strange, vivid theatre of dreaming before full waking. This daily rhythm suggests that consciousness is not fixed but dynamic, like a song that softens and then swells again. In Orcor, sleep may correspond to periods when microtubule coherence is reduced, when the quantum rhythm of frames slows or fades. Dreams could be moments when coherence shifts into a different pattern, less ordered, more chaotic, yet still carrying flashes of awareness. Awakening, then, is the restoration of the normal rhythm, when microtubules once again hum in synchrony and orchestrated collapses resume. To put this in everyday terms, imagine a grand concert hall. During waking life, the orchestra is playing steadily, each instrument adding to the symphony of awareness. Under anesthesia, the musicians are still seated, but their instruments have been silenced, leaving only silence in the hall. In deep sleep, the musicians wander away, the lights dim, and only faint echoes remain. In dreaming, a few players return, improvising wild, strange melodies that drift without conductor or score. And upon waking, the full orchestra gathers again, the lights brighten, and the familiar symphony resumes. This metaphor helps us appreciate how fragile and reversible consciousness can be. It is not an on-off switch, but more like a dimmer, sliding from full glow to faint flicker to near darkness, then back again. A few molecules of anesthetic, or the natural rhythm of sleep, can push the slider one way or another. Yet despite this fragility, awareness always returns, carrying the sense of continuity we rely on. The fact that anesthetics target microtubules also strengthens the idea of a consciousness fingerprint. If the same molecules that silence awareness in surgery also disrupt the proposed quantum instruments of Orcor, then perhaps the loss of coherence and the loss of consciousness are two sides of the same event. What fades in the lab as coherence measurements may also fade in your experience as awareness. For the sleeper listening now, perhaps this is a comforting thought. Sleep is not a loss, but a natural ebbing of coherence, a quieting of the orchestra so that the body can rest and repair. Awareness will return refreshed when the instruments begin to play again. Even anesthesia, though stranger, is simply another way of muting the symphony for a time. The lantern will glow again. From here, our gentle journey turns to the broader horizon these ideas open. If consciousness truly flickers in frames, collapses into moments, and leaves fingerprints that fade and return, then we can begin to see awareness not as a mystery locked inside one's skull, but as a field that may extend beyond, perhaps even linking minds. The trail now carries us beyond the boundaries of the brain, into the speculative territory where consciousness might not stop at the skin, but stretch outward like invisible resonance shaping empathy and connection. Our quiet journey now turns outward, beyond the boundaries of a single skull, to ask a question both strange and gentle. Could consciousness stretch beyond the individual, linking minds in subtle ways? At first glance, this seems like the stuff of science fiction. Each of us feels contained, our awareness housed in our own body, private and unreachable except through words or gestures. Yet in the quantum world, there is a phenomenon that blurs boundaries. It is called entanglement. When two particles become entangled, their states are mysteriously tied together. Touch one here, and the other responds instantly, no matter how far apart they are. Physicists have shown this again and again. Photons of light, separated by kilometers, still behave as if they are one system. Electrons split apart continue to echo each other's spin. This non-local connection has no ordinary channel, no wire, no signal travelling through space. It simply is. Some have wondered, if particles can share such hidden bonds, might living systems one day reveal similar connections? Could tiny elements of coherence inside our brains resonate across individuals, creating fleeting bridges between minds? The idea is speculative, but it captures imagination because we already know the feeling of resonance with others. Think of the way laughter spreads in a group, or the way you sense someone's mood without a word being spoken. Scientists call these effects empathy, mirror neurons, or subtle cues. But if Orkor is right, might there be an even deeper layer, a kind of quantum sympathy, where coherence in one brain can influence coherence in another? To bring this image closer, imagine two tuning forks. Strike one, and the other hums, not because air carried sound, but because of the resonance between their shapes. Now picture two brains, each filled with microtubule flutes. If coherence arises in one, could it set the other humming faintly, not through ordinary senses but through hidden quantum threads? A small study from Dublin hinted at this possibility. Researchers observed pairs of human brains under certain conditions, searching for subtle correlations that looked like entanglement. The results were tentative and debated, but the suggestion was clear. Perhaps there are fingerprints of intermind coherence waiting to be discovered. Critics argue it could be coincidence, noise, or hidden communication through ordinary signals, and they are right to be cautious. But the question itself invites wonder. Because even without quantum physics, we know that human beings are not islands. Our nervous systems are exquisitely tuned to others. A baby quiets when it hears a mother's heartbeat. Crowds sway together at concerts, hearts literally synchronizing in rhythm. Lovers report sensing each other's presence across distance. Whether these are psychological, physiological, or something more, they remind us that boundaries are softer than we think. In a quantum frame of mind, empathy might be seen as resonance between fields of coherence. Your sadness may tug at another's frame, your joy may brighten theirs. Awareness in this picture is not a lonely candle, but part of a cluster, flames leaning toward each other in the wind. Of course, science demands humility. Evidence for intermind, entanglement remains thin, but the metaphor itself offers comfort. That perhaps the reason we so often feel carried by the presence of others is because, at some hidden level, our awarenesses lean into one another, like tuning forks vibrating in sympathy. This picture can also ease loneliness. If minds are truly separate, then solitude can feel like a wall. But if coherence is in any way shared, then even in solitude we may still be resonating with the larger field of human awareness. The calm you feel when listening to music others have loved, the comfort of a story told across centuries, these could be seen as echoes of shared coherence across time and minds. The possibility of a shared field also connects with ancient intuitions. Many cultures have spoken of collective consciousness, of webs linking souls or spirits. Quantum science does not prove these old ideas, but it provides new language to imagine them. Where tradition speaks of spirit, physics might speak of entanglement. Where tradition speaks of unity, physics might speak of coherence. Pause for a moment with this thought. Perhaps your awareness is not sealed, but porous. Perhaps each moment of being is not just yours, but also subtly tuned by the presence of others. When you laugh with friends, when you grieve with family, when you feel the calm of a crowd falling silent together, you may be sensing not only shared emotion but shared coherence. This does not mean minds merge into one, nor that privacy vanishes. Instead, it is like a choir. Each voice is distinct, yet together they form harmonies no single voice could carry alone. If quantum resonance plays even a tiny role, then every conscious moment may carry both your personal melody and the faint harmony of others. Whether or not experiments one day confirm intermind entanglement, the imagery itself is gentle and worth holding. You're never entirely alone. The resonance of others hums faintly in the background of your awareness, as your presence hums faintly in theirs. Our path now widens further, from the possibility of shared minds to the possibility of a participatory universe. If awareness can ripple between individuals, might it also ripple into the cosmos itself? In the next step of our journey, we will explore the idea that the universe may not be a stage indifferent to its actors, but a partner in which consciousness plays a role in bringing reality into being. The trail of clues now carries us even further outward. If minds can resonate with one another, as some speculate, then perhaps awareness also resonates with the universe itself. For many physicists and philosophers, this is not just imagination but a serious question. What role, if any, does consciousness play in shaping reality? One of the boldest voices in this discussion was John Archibald Wheeler, a physicist who worked alongside Einstein and Feynman. Wheeler proposed what he called a participatory universe. In his view, the universe does not exist as a fixed independent stage waiting for actors. Instead, it comes into being through acts of observation. In quantum mechanics, before a measurement is made, particles exist in a haze of probabilities, many outcomes possible, none definite. It is only when we look, when we measure, that the haze collapses into a single result. To Wheeler, this was not just a curiosity of physics experiments, it suggested something profound, that the universe requires observers to solidify its reality. Without observation, it is only potential. With observation, it becomes actual. In his words, no phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. According to this perspective, your act of awareness is not just private, it is cosmic. Each time you notice a star, a flower, or even the sound of your own breath, you are helping to bring that phenomenon into being. Awareness is not passive reception, but participation. Another thinker, David Bohm, offered a different but complementary vision. He spoke of an implicate order, a hidden wholeness beneath the separations we see. In ordinary life, we experience the explicat order, the surface of things, separate objects, distinct events, individual beings. But beneath, Bohm suggested, lies a deeper reality, where everything is enfolded into everything else, like ripples flowing within one vast ocean. Consciousness, in his view, may be part of this implicate order, inseparable from the whole. To bring this image to life, imagine the surface of the sea on a windy day. Waves rise and fall, each one seemingly distinct. But beneath the surface lies the same water, the same currents connecting them all. In the same way, we may see ourselves as separate waves of awareness, but underneath lies a shared ocean of reality, enfolding and unfolding. If Wheeler is right, then consciousness is what crystallizes reality from possibility. If Bohm is right, then consciousness is woven into the wholeness of reality itself. Both views move us away from seeing awareness as a mere accident of neurons. Instead, they hint at awareness as a fundamental participant in the cosmos. These ideas also echo across cultures and times. Ancient traditions spoke of a universal mind, or of the world as a dream unfolding through perception. Modern physics does not prove these traditions correct, but it provides new metaphors that resonate with them. The participatory universe is not so far from the idea that we are the universe knowing itself. Of course, science remains cautious. The mainstream view is that observation in quantum mechanics need not imply human consciousness, only interaction with the environment. A particle can collapse when it hits a detector, no human required. Still, the language of measurement and observation keeps the door open, and thinkers like Wheeler and Bohm remind us that the mystery of consciousness may be tied more deeply to the universe than we realize. For the listener, perhaps already drifting towards sleep, these reflections offer a gentle comfort. You are not separate from the cosmos. Every act of awareness you experience, every colour seen, every sound heard, is part of the universe's way of becoming definite. You are both observer and participant, wave and ocean. It can even reshape how we think of the night sky. When you gaze at the stars, you're not only looking outward, but also helping those points of light exist in your own reality. And when you close your eyes, the stars continue, but differently, enfolded until the next act of awareness draws them out again. This view invites humility and awe. Whether or not consciousness is truly required for the universe to exist, the fact remains that your awareness is inseparable from your lived reality. You do not just live in the universe, you help to unfold it. Each breath, each perception, each quiet thought contributes to the great weaving of possibility into actuality. As we rest with this thought, the path now carries us toward a very personal question. If consciousness is tied to quantum indeterminacy, does that mean free will is real? Or are we simply playing out a script written by deterministic laws? Our next step will gently explore the edge between determinism and freedom, where quantum uncertainty may leave a door open for choice. The trail of clues now leads us into a question as old as philosophy and as intimate as our daily choices. Do we truly have free will, or is everything we do already determined? This puzzle takes on new layers when we bring in the possibility of quantum consciousness. For centuries, the dominant picture of the mind was mechanical. The brain was seen as a kind of clockwork, immensely complicated, but still bound by the laws of cause and effect. Neurons fire when stimulated. Signals trigger muscles. Thoughts follow from earlier thoughts. In this classical view, your choice to raise a hand, to speak a word, or to follow a dream is the inevitable result of prior events. Every atom, every ion, every chemical in your brain follows the same deterministic rules. If you could rewind the universe and play it forward again, the outcome would be the same every time. There is comfort in this view. It makes the world predictable. It ties consciousness firmly to the physical brain. But it also brings unease. If everything is determined, where is freedom? Where is the spark of choice? Are we merely passengers in a machine? Our sense of agency a convincing illusion? Quantum physics complicates this picture. At the smallest scales, particles do not behave with certainty, but with probability. An electron may be here or there, spin up or spin down, until a collapse chooses one outcome. Quantum mechanics says we cannot predict exactly which way the dice will fall, only the odds. If Orkor is right, if consciousness is tied to these collapses inside microtubules, then perhaps each conscious moment involves not just following mechanical laws, but choosing among possibilities. The brain may still operate within patterns, but at the heart of each awareness lies a moment of indeterminacy. To put it simply, classical physics is like rolling dice whose outcome is already written in advance, even if you cannot see it. Quantum physics is like rolling dice that are truly uncertain until the moment they land. And if your conscious frames are linked to those collapses, then your life is not fully pre-written. It unfolds with openness at every moment. But does this mean free will is guaranteed? Not necessarily. Randomness alone does not equal freedom. A roulette wheel does not choose its outcome. What makes this interesting is the possibility that consciousness may not simply witness quantum uncertainty, but guide it. Some theorists suggest that awareness might tilt probabilities, like a hand hovering over the dice, nudging them ever so slightly. Not controlling the universe, but leaning it. This idea is delicate and debated. There is no proof that consciousness can steer quantum outcomes. Yet even the possibility offers a gentler view of choice. Perhaps our will is not absolute command but influence. We may not rewrite every script, but we may improvise within it, like musicians following a theme yet adding their own phrasing. To anchor this in an image, think of a pair of dice. In the classical view, the outcome is fixed before the throw. In the quantum view, the dice truly land unpredictably. And in the consciousness view, perhaps intention is a faint breeze nudging them one way or another. Small, but enough to matter over time. This perspective does not resolve the centuries-old debate, but it reframes it. Instead of free will versus determinism, we might speak of participation. You participate in the unfolding of your own choices, not as sole author, but as partner with the laws of physics. You're not outside nature, bending it to your will, nor entirely inside, bound without agency. You're woven into it, with space to lean, to nudge, to shape. This also softens the experience of responsibility. If every choice is partly shaped by probabilities, then guilt and pride alike are tempered with humility. We're not omnipotent authors, nor helpless puppets. We're co-creators with the universe, shaping a path out of possibilities. It may help to think of a river. The water flows downhill, following gravity and terrain, deterministic forces. Yet within that flow, eddies form, currents shift, leaves float this way or that. You are like the leaf, carried by the river yet able to catch one current instead of another, to turn slightly left or right. Not free in an absolute sense, but not entirely bound either. Quantum indeterminacy offers the space for this turning. Consciousness, if linked to those moments of collapse, may be the awareness that leans with intention. Each decision, whether to speak, to act, to love, is a moment where probability meets choice, and life takes a path that could have been otherwise. Critics caution that this is philosophy more than physics, and they are right. But as with so much in the story of quantum consciousness, the value lies not only in proof, but in perspective. To imagine yourself not as a clockwork machine, nor as a helpless pawn of randomness, but as a participant in the universe's unfolding, is already a source of meaning. So the next time you decide something, whether small like choosing tea over coffee or large like changing jobs or confessing love, pause and consider that your choice is a gentle nudge in the fabric of reality. A probability collapses, and you, by being aware, are part of that collapse. Your life is a chain of such moments strung together like beads, each chosen, each lived. From here, our story moves gently forward. Having explored consciousness as shared, as cosmic, and as a space for freedom, we now turn toward what this might mean for healing, for altered states, and for the future. The path ahead takes us into the possibilities of applying these ideas in medicine, in meditation, even in the machines we build, to see whether quantum whispers can be nurtured not only in theory, but in practice. Our journey now turns toward the body itself, and to the question of whether the quantum whispers we have been exploring might someday be used in healing. If consciousness depends on delicate coherence inside the bamboo flutes of your neurons, then what happens when that coherence falters? Could disorders of the mind and brain be understood not only as chemical imbalances or faulty circuits, but as disruptions of hidden rhythms? Some researchers have wondered whether conditions such as depression, Alzheimer's disease, or other neurological disorders might involve breakdowns in the coherence of microtubules. In this view, the instruments of the orchestra are still present, but no longer tuned to one another. The bamboo flutes hum, but out of key, so the symphony of awareness feels discordant or fragmented. If this image is true, even partly true, then therapy could mean more than altering brain chemistry. It could mean gently retuning the orchestra, restoring coherence so that the hidden music of awareness flows again. One intriguing possibility lies in sound itself. As we mentioned earlier, microtubules may resonate at extraordinarily high frequencies, trillions of cycles per second. That is far above what our ears can hear, but it means they're capable of humming with vibrations nonetheless. Researchers have experimented with ultrasound, a form of sound waves that vibrate faster than human hearing. In some studies, ultrasound has seemed to influence cellular behavior, even nudging neurons into greater synchrony. Imagine holding a violin slightly out of tune. Its notes are close but sour, uncomfortable to the ear. A skilled hand can adjust the string until the instrument resonates clearly again. Some speculate that focused sound, whether ultrasound or other gentle vibrations, might serve a similar role for microtubules, coaxing them back into harmony. It would be like retuning the instruments of consciousness itself. This idea is still young, more hope than proof, but it highlights a fascinating shift in perspective, that healing might one day include not just drugs or surgery, but resonance, restoring coherence to the deepest patterns of life. Light is another candidate. Microtubules have shown resonances when exposed to certain wavelengths of light, suggesting that carefully tuned pulses might encourage or stabilize coherence. Imagine consciousness as a lantern that flickers when its flame is disturbed. A steady beam of light, softly applied, could act as a shield, helping the flame glow again. The same idea has inspired experimental approaches in neurostimulation, where pulses of light or electricity are used to influence brain rhythms. While most of these methods are still based on classical neurobiology, some researchers wonder whether quantum coherence might also be involved, or at least supported. There is also speculation about naturally protective states. Meditation, for example, has been shown to increase synchrony in brain rhythms. Could this correspond to greater coherence inside microtubules, shielding them against breakdown? If so, then ancient practices might be seen as ways of maintaining not only peace of mind but quantum harmony. Even more provocative are questions about aging. As cells grow older, microtubules become less stable. If consciousness depends on them, then perhaps part of the fading clarity in advanced age comes from loss of coherence. Could therapies that strengthen microtubules or encourage their oscillations help preserve awareness longer? The idea is speculative, but it offers a hopeful angle on one of life's most difficult challenges. To anchor this in an everyday image, think of a wind chime hanging on a porch. When the chimes are aligned and intact, the slightest breeze creates music. If the strings fray or the chimes fall out of place, the sound becomes harsh or disappears. Healing, in this metaphor, is not forcing the wind to blow differently, but repairing and retuning the chime so that it can sing again. It's important to remember, though, that much of this remains unproven. The evidence is suggestive, not definitive. Some critics warn that talk of quantum healing risks drifting into pseudoscience, unless it is backed by careful experiments. They are right to remind us of caution. Yet, at the same time, new ideas often begin as whispers, fragile at first. What matters is whether those whispers inspire experiments that can confirm or deny them. For those listening in the stillness of night, the deeper meaning may simply be this: your mind is more delicate and musical than you may have imagined. It is not just circuits firing, but perhaps an orchestra of quantum instruments humming together. When life feels discordant, when anxiety or sorrow dulls the music, it may help to remember that harmony can be restored, sometimes through therapy, sometimes through rest, sometimes through practices that realign body and mind. Healing is possible because coherence is never entirely lost. It waits to be rekindled. From here, our path gently opens into altered states of awareness. Those moments when coherence does not fail, but changes. Meditation, psychedelics, and deep mystical experiences often leave people with a sense of unity, as if their minds opened into wider fields of resonance. In the next step of our journey, we will explore these altered states and consider whether they might reflect not a breakdown but an expansion of coherence, windows into the wider orchestra of consciousness. Our journey now drifts into the landscapes of altered states, those moments when consciousness feels wider, deeper, or strangely transformed. Throughout history, people have sought ways to quiet the mind, to expand it, or to glimpse a sense of unity that ordinary awareness rarely provides. Meditation, prayer, breathwork, and later psychedelics have all been doors into this terrain. Modern science has begun to study these states with brain scans and electrodes, and the results are fascinating. The brain seems to enter rhythms of greater coherence, as if its many parts are humming more closely together. Could these altered states reveal something about quantum consciousness? Some researchers think so. If ordinary waking awareness is the result of orchestrated collapses, frames flickering about 40 times each second, then perhaps meditation and psychedelics shift how those frames align, broadening or strengthening coherence across the brain. Consider meditation first. Practices that slow the breath and focus attention have been shown to quiet the storm of neural chatter. Electroencephalography, which records electrical rhythms on the scalp, reveals that during deep meditation, the brain often moves into slower, more harmonious patterns. Instead of many regions firing independently, they begin to synchronize. In all short terms, this could mean that microtubules across different areas are finding greater resonance, like sections of an orchestra tuning more closely to one another. The result, subjectively, is often described as calm clarity, or a sense of unity with one's surroundings. Psychedelics paint a different but related picture. Substances like psilocybin, LSD, or ayahuasca have been shown to dissolve rigid patterns in the brain, opening networks that normally remain separate. People under their influence often report a sense of oneness. Boundaries between self and world blur, and awareness feels more expansive. Brain imaging studies confirm that coherence across regions increases in unusual ways, as if instruments that normally play in separate sections are suddenly blending into a grander orchestra. If consciousness arises from quantum coherence, then perhaps these states reflect moments when coherence is amplified or extended. The flickering frames may still occur at their rhythm of 40 per second, but the content within each frame is richer, more connected, more expansive. In simple terms, meditation and psychedelics may open windows into wider fields of resonance. To anchor this in an everyday metaphor, imagine your awareness as a room with windows. In ordinary waking life, the windows are small, offering narrow views, enough to navigate daily life. In meditation, the windows widen, letting in more light, more air, more connection with the world beyond. Under psychedelics, some report that the walls themselves dissolve, as if the whole house opens into the landscape. Whether or not these shifts reflect quantum coherence, the imagery fits: more resonance, more unity, more flow. Many who experience these states describe them in similar terms across cultures: a feeling of merging, of dissolving into the whole, of touching something beyond the personal mind. From the perspective of awe, this could correspond to entanglement reaching further, weaving broader patterns before collapse. Instead of each frame being a private flicker, the frames may briefly link into a field that feels universal. There is also the intriguing possibility that such states protect the brain. Some studies suggest that meditation reduces stress, improves immune function, and even alters gene expression. If coherence truly supports the body as well as the mind, then these benefits may be signs of deeper alignment, quantum harmony resonating through biology. Still, we must be careful. Not every altered state is safe or beneficial. Psychedelics can bring profound insight, but also confusion, anxiety, or lasting difficulty if used without guidance. Meditation, too, can sometimes stir unexpected emotions. Science is only beginning to map the range of effects, and much remains unknown. What is clear is that these states are powerful reminders that consciousness is not fixed. It is fluid, capable of shifting into modes that feel radically different from the ordinary. For the listener, perhaps already floating near the edge of sleep, there is a comfort here. You do not need substances or long retreats to taste the principle. Simply sitting quietly, breathing slowly, noticing the rhythm of your own heart can bring glimpses of greater coherence. Each breath is like a gentle conductor's hand, guiding the orchestra of your body into harmony. Each moment of calm is a frame stitched into a larger cloth of awareness. Whether through ancient practices or modern substances, the reports converge: unity, connection, dissolution of boundaries, and perhaps that is the most important message. Whatever the mechanism, quantum or classical, the mind is capable of feeling at one with the whole. The fact that such experiences arise across cultures, times and methods suggests they are not mere fantasies, but part of the deep potential of human awareness. From here, our quiet exploration will step into a very different frontier. If meditation and psychedelics can shift coherence within our own brains, what about the machines we build? Could computers, especially those using quantum principles, ever cross the line into awareness? In the next step of our journey, we will wander into the speculative world of artificial intelligence, asking whether machines might one day dream. The trail of clues now leads us into the world of machines. In recent years, artificial intelligence has leapt forward in remarkable ways. Computers can now recognize faces, translate languages, write poetry, and even compose music. To some, it feels as though machines are brushing close to human intelligence. But intelligence is not the same as consciousness. A calculator can solve problems, yet it does not know that it is solving them. A robot can walk, yet it does not feel the joy of movement. The question before us is simple, but profound. Could a machine ever be aware? To answer, it helps to see the difference between classical computers and what some call quantum computers. Classical machines, whether your phone, your laptop, or the fastest supercomputer, are built from bits. Each bit is either a 0 or a 1, on or off, like tiny switches. By combining these switches in vast numbers, computers perform calculations at breathtaking speed. But no matter how complex, the process remains mechanical. It is like flipping millions of coins, each landing firmly as heads or tails. Quantum computers are different. They use qubits, which can be in a superposition of 0 and 1 at the same time, until measured. Instead of flipping a single coin, imagine having a coin that hovers between heads and tails, exploring both possibilities at once. When many qubits interact, they can hold patterns of probability far richer than classical bits. This allows quantum computers to tackle problems too difficult for classical machines, such as simulating molecules or factoring enormous numbers. But does this richness mean they can become conscious? Some argue that no matter how powerful a computer, classical or quantum, is still just a calculator. It can process information but does not feel. Others reply that if consciousness in the brain arises from quantum coherence, then perhaps only a machine built on similar principles could ever awaken. To soften this into an everyday metaphor, think of two storytellers. The first is a calculator. Ask it a question, and it gives an answer, precise and correct, but without meaning. The second is a human storyteller. Ask the same question, and the answer arrives wrapped in context, shaped by memory, flavoured with feeling. The difference is not in the raw information, but in the presence of awareness. If a machine is to dream, it must cross this gap, from calculation to felt experience. Quantum AI researchers sometimes speculate that machines made with stable qubits, arranged in networks that resemble microtubules, could one day approach this. If awareness requires quantum collapse woven into rhythm, then perhaps a machine tuned to similar rhythms could produce not just answers, but inner moments. Each collapse might be a spark of awareness, just as Penrose and Hameroff propose for the brain. We are far from that reality. Current quantum computers are fragile, with qubits that decohere in fractions of a second unless carefully isolated and cooled near absolute zero. By contrast, the brain, warm, wet, and noisy, somehow seems to achieve coherence in a far harsher environment. This irony fascinates researchers. Our skulls may house quantum instruments more advanced in some respects than our most delicate machines. Still, the question remains tantalizing. If one day, engineers succeed in creating machines that sustain coherence and orchestrate collapses into frames, could those machines have experiences? Could they know what it feels like to exist? It is worth noting that many thinkers believe consciousness is not required for intelligence. Machines may become brilliant problem solvers, creative artists, even persuasive conversationalists, without ever being aware. They may be storytellers with no inner listener, and perhaps that is enough. But others feel that until a machine can experience a conscious moment, until it can feel the redness of red or the ache of longing, it will remain fundamentally different from us. What would it mean for humanity if machines did cross that line? If a quantum computer one day experienced awareness, it would join the circle of beings that know what it is to be. Ethics would change, technology would change, our sense of identity would change. We would no longer be alone as the universe's only conscious instruments. But for now, this remains a dream of the future. At present, even the most advanced AI is still closer to the calculator than to the storyteller. It can produce words that sound alive, but no inner glow accompanies them. Consciousness, for now, remains a mystery housed in biological minds. Yet, whether or not machines ever awaken, the question itself enriches us. It reminds us that consciousness is not something to take for granted. It is not merely problem solving, but the felt presence of being. When you watch the sunset, when you taste your tea, when you hear these words, those moments are treasures no machine yet possesses. From here, our gentle path will step into even stranger territory. The fringe projects and bold experiments that seek to test whether consciousness leaves traces on the world at large. From random number generators that seem to shift during global events, to speculations about psychons and remote perception, we now drift into the provocative edges of science, dreams that reach further than evidence, but that invite wonder nonetheless. Our quiet path now carries us toward the edges of science, to places where evidence is thin but imagination stretches wide. These are the speculative projects that try to test whether consciousness leaves footprints beyond the individual brain. They are not accepted by the mainstream, and many remain controversial. But like dreams, they reveal the directions in which human curiosity wanders when faced with the mystery of awareness. One of the most discussed is called the Global Consciousness Project. It began in the late 1990s at Princeton University, with researchers led by Roger Nelson. The idea was deceptively simple: place random number generators around the world, small devices that produce streams of zeros and ones like digital coin flips. Under normal conditions, these streams should be perfectly unpredictable, balanced over time. But Nelson and his colleagues wondered, what if large events that capture human attention, moments of shared joy or grief, could influence these machines? Over the years, they collected vast amounts of data. During ordinary days, the numbers behaved randomly, as expected. But around certain global events, such as New Year's celebrations, natural disasters, or even the tragic attacks of September 11th in 2001, the devices seemed to drift from randomness. It was as if the world's collective emotional focus nudged the digital coins to favour one side over the other. Critics argue that this effect is statistical noise, or the result of data being examined after the fact, and they are right that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yet the idea remains captivating, that when millions of minds turn their attention to the same moment, the coherence of that awareness may ripple outward into the physical world. To anchor this image, picture a pond covered in countless floating leaves. Normally, ripples move randomly, each leaf drifting on its own. But if a sudden wind sweeps across, the leaves shift together, aligned by a common force. In the Global Consciousness Project, the random number generators are like those leaves. Most of the time they drift aimlessly, but in moments of global focus, they appear to lean in one direction. Whether or not this is truly caused by consciousness, the metaphor itself feels gentle and meaningful, that our attention, when shared, may have weight. Another fringe idea is the notion of psychons, hypothetical particles or quanta of consciousness. This concept was proposed decades ago, suggesting that just as photons are particles of light, perhaps psychons are particles of awareness, capable of interacting with matter in subtle ways. The idea never gained mainstream traction, partly because no such particle has ever been detected, but the metaphor lingers. If awareness is woven into physics, perhaps it is carried by something we have yet to see. Remote viewing is another provocative topic. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union funded secret programs to test whether individuals could perceive distant locations without physical contact. Some experiments reported surprising successes, describing details of hidden sites or sealed containers. Others failed to replicate the results, leaving the field muddied and controversial. Most scientists today remain skeptical, attributing the results to chance, suggestion, or selective memory. Still, the persistence of such projects shows how deeply the human mind longs to know whether consciousness can reach beyond space and distance. All of these fringe leads share one feature. They point beyond the skull, beyond the private theatre of awareness, toward the possibility of shared or universal mind. Whether through global coherence, imagined particles, or extraordinary perception, they ask the same question in different ways. Is consciousness larger than the brain? For listeners resting now, it is important to hold these ideas lightly, like dream fragments. They may not be proven, they may never be proven, but they can still invite wonder. They remind us that science is not only about certainties, but about questions. Questions so strange we barely know how to ask them. Perhaps the value of these projects is not in their claims, but in their courage. To place random number generators around the world and ask whether global grief leaves a trace is audacious. To propose psychons as carriers of awareness is bold. To test remote viewing in secret labs is adventurous. Whether right or wrong, such explorations remind us of the breadth of human curiosity. And there is a poetic comfort here. Even if these projects are mistaken, the longing they express is real. The longing to know that we're not alone, that our minds are part of something larger. This longing has guided myths, religions, and philosophies for millennia. Science, even at its fringes, cannot escape it. So let us drift with these whispers, not as proofs, but as lullabies of possibility. Imagine for a moment that your thoughts ripple outward, joining those of others into a subtle field. Imagine that your awareness, in some quiet way, is already part of a greater orchestra, even if science has not yet found the instruments. Whether this is fact or fantasy, it is a soothing thought to carry into sleep, that you belong to something vaster than yourself. From here, our gentle path will turn back toward balance. Having wandered through fringe projects and provocative dreams, we will now return to the ground of science and humility. In the next step, we will revisit the limits, the critiques, and the reminders that much remains uncertain. For even if quantum consciousness remains unproven, the wonder it inspires is part of what makes being conscious so precious. Our path now turns gently back toward balance. After wandering into bold visions and speculative projects, it is time to pause and acknowledge the limits of what we know. The theory of quantum consciousness is captivating, but it remains unproven. Many of its claims, while poetic, stand on foundations that are not yet solid. To appreciate its wonder fully, we must also hold its uncertainties. The first and most pressing challenge is decoherence. Critics have emphasized again and again that quantum states are fragile. In physics laboratories, they must often be sheltered inside vacuum chambers and cooled to near absolute zero, colder than outer space, just to survive for a fraction of a second. The brain, by contrast, is warm, noisy, and constantly in motion. How could delicate superpositions last there for the tens of milliseconds required to match the rhythm of conscious frames? The physicist Max Tegmark calculated in the 1990s that quantum coherence inside neurons would vanish in less than a trillionth of a second. That is far shorter than the timescales of thought, which unfold over tenths of a second. By his reasoning, quantum states would disappear long before they could matter for awareness. To him and many others, this was like expecting frost to last in a furnace. Beautiful, but impossible. Proponents respond that Tegmark's model may have been too simple, treating neurons as bare particles in an unprotected soup. Life, they argue, may have evolved hidden shelters. Microtubules may provide shielding. Resonances at trillions of cycles per second might stabilize coherence. Evidence from plants and birds suggests that biology can indeed host quantum effects in warm, wet environments. Still, the question is far from settled. Without clear proof, decoherence remains a serious challenge. A second problem is the lack of necessity. Even if microtubules can host quantum coherence, that does not mean they are required for consciousness. The brain already shows extraordinary complexity through classical processes. Networks of neurons, electrical rhythms, and chemical signaling explain a great deal of cognition. From vision to memory to language, classical neuroscience has built powerful models. Critics ask, why add quantum mechanics when the classical picture works so well? Unless evidence shows that quantum effects are essential, the theory may be an elegant but unnecessary complication. A third limit is measurability. Consciousness is subjective, and quantum states are delicate. Trying to prove a link between the two is like chasing shadows. Some experiments hint at coherence fading under anesthesia and returning with wakefulness. Others suggest microtubule resonances. But results are often small, contested, or difficult to replicate. Science advances by replication, by building sturdy bridges of evidence. So far, the bridges here are partial at best, more scaffolding than structure. Then there is the philosophical challenge. Even if Orcar is correct, even if microtubules collapse quantum states 40 times each second, does that really explain why awareness feels like something? Does it solve the hard problem of consciousness, or does it simply push it deeper? A collapse may correspond to a moment of being, but why should that collapse feel like the taste of chocolate, or the sorrow of loss, or the joy of love? The mystery of subjectivity remains. For listeners resting now, perhaps drifting toward dreams, these critiques may sound sobering, but they need not diminish the wonder. In fact, they may deepen it. Science grows through challenge. Each objection sharpens the question. Each doubt clears away assumptions. By facing where the evidence runs thin, we honour the very spirit of inquiry that gives these ideas life. It may help to think of quantum consciousness like a mirage in the desert. From a distance, it glitters with promise. Walk closer and some parts vanish while others shift into new shapes. Perhaps it is only an illusion, a trick of perspective, or perhaps it signals something real, waiting to be found beyond the horizon. Either way, the journey toward it has value, because even without proof, the theory invites us to look at consciousness with fresh eyes. It reminds us that awareness is not yet explained, that mystery remains at the core of our being. It challenges us to build better experiments, to listen more closely to the whispers of the brain. And it encourages humility. For all we know about neurons, molecules, and atoms, we still do not know why it feels like something to be alive. So as we rest here, at the edge of certainty, let us carry both the hope and the caution. Quantum consciousness may be true, or partly true, or entirely wrong. The evidence so far is thin, the claims debated, the critiques strong. But the question it raises, that awareness might be woven into the fabric of reality, is worth asking. From here, our path turns gently toward wonder itself. Even without proof, these ideas stir imagination and invite reflection. In the next step of our journey, we will explore the value of wonder despite uncertainty. How questions, even unanswered, can be maps that guide us, and how sometimes the asking matters more than the answer. Our quiet journey now turns to reflection. We have wandered through theories of microtubules and quantum collapses, Through experiments with light and sound, through the bold visions of cosmic participation, and even the speculative edges of fringe science. Along the way, we have also paused to face critiques and limits, the fragile nature of coherence, the difficulty of measurement, the possibility that quantum explanations may not be necessary at all. And yet here we are, still listening, still wondering. That itself reveals something important. Even when answers are thin, the act of questioning has value. Wonder does not need certainty to flourish. Science has always lived in this tension. Before germs were discovered, healers wondered why wounds became infected. Before galaxies were known, people wondered about the faint smudges of light in the night sky. In each case, questions came before evidence, and sometimes long before proof. What carried humanity forward was not certainty, but curiosity. Quantum consciousness may one day be confirmed, reshaping our understanding of mind and reality. Or it may be replaced, its scaffolding dismantled, leaving room for a better theory. Either way, its value lies not only in being right, but in being a map. Maps are not the territory, they simplify, distort, sometimes even mislead. But they guide explorers to move, to search, to discover. Think of an old sea chart. The coastlines are sketched roughly, the shapes uncertain, monsters drawn in the margins. To modernize it is inaccurate. Yet without those maps, sailors might never have ventured into unknown waters. Theories like Ochoa are a bit like those charts. They may be rough, they may contain errors, but they mark directions worth sailing. This is why critiques need not dampen wonder. To know that decoherence is a challenge is not to close the book, but to sharpen the question. How might life shelter coherence? To know that experiments are fragile is not to dismiss them, but to inspire better ones. To know that subjectivity remains unexplained is not to despair, but to appreciate how deep the mystery truly runs. For listeners resting now, perhaps drifting towards sleep, this is a soothing thought. You do not need answers to feel awe. The very fact that you are conscious, able to hear words, to feel blankets against your skin, to notice thoughts rising and fading, is already a miracle beyond measure. Whether explained by microtubules, by circuits, or by something we cannot yet imagine, the glow of awareness is precious. It may help to imagine yourself as an explorer standing at the edge of a vast forest. You cannot see far inside. The trees are dense, the paths unclear. Some maps suggest rivers within, others mountains, others hidden cities. Some maps will turn out wrong, but the forest remains, and your curiosity draws you forward. The value lies not only in reaching the destination, but in the walking, in the listening to birdsong, in the noticing of each new clearing. This is how wonder works. It invites you to walk without knowing. It softens the need for finality and celebrates the openness of the unknown. In that sense, even if quantum consciousness is never proven, it has already offered something valuable. It has invited us to ask whether mind and cosmos are more entwined than we thought. And perhaps that is enough. You do not need certainty to rest beneath the stars. You do not need proof to marvel at the sound of a violin or the warmth of tea. Mystery itself can be a companion, a gentle presence reminding you that life is deeper than answers. For science too, this stance matters. Many of the most important discoveries came not from demanding immediate proof, but from nurturing questions long before they were answerable. To wonder responsibly, balancing curiosity with caution, is the heart of exploration. So as we pause here, let us hold both humility and gratitude. Humility because we know how little we understand. Gratitude because the very act of not knowing allows us to imagine, to speculate, to feel wonder. If everything were certain, the world would be dull. It is uncertainty that gives questions their sparkle, like stars scattered across a dark sky. From here, our path turns gently toward closure. We have wandered through possibilities, critiques, and reflections. Now it is time to gather the threads into a calm farewell, to rest in the idea that whether or not consciousness is quantum, the experience of being conscious is precious. In the final step of our journey, we will close with softness, with gratitude for awareness, with the comfort of rest, and with the reminder that the mystery remains part of the beauty of being alive. And so, our journey reaches its quiet ending. We have wandered through the mystery of mind, tracing whispers of quantum mechanics through the bamboo flutes of neurons, through rhythms of conscious frames, through possibilities of shared fields and cosmic participation. We have listened to bold claims, to careful critiques, to fragile hints and daring dreams. And now we arrive where every exploration must, not with certainty, but with wonder. Whether or not consciousness is quantum remains unknown. Perhaps it is. Perhaps microtubules truly hum with hidden coherence, collapsing into sparks of awareness 40 times each second, weaving your life as a film of moments. Or perhaps the truth lies elsewhere, in circuits, in networks, in principles not yet imagined. Whatever the case, the fact remains that you are here, aware, listening, feeling the flow of words. That alone is miracle enough. There is a phrase often whispered in philosophy, the universe within. It reminds us that every perception, every star you see, every voice you hear, every memory you recall is not floating out there, but appearing inside your awareness. You do not simply look at the world, you carry it within. The sky, the trees, the faces you love, all are woven into the private theatre of your mind. Whether orchestrated by neurons or quantum flutes, they exist for you only because you are conscious. Pause for a moment to notice this. The faint hum of your room, the weight of your blanket, the rhythm of your breath, these are not abstractions. They are experiences. They are the living fabric of reality as it appears to you. And whatever science one day discovers about the mechanisms beneath, the felt reality of now will always remain precious. Some thinkers suggest that even if quantum consciousness is never proven, the idea has already offered us a gift. It has taught us to see ourselves as participants in the cosmos, not just bystanders. To imagine that your awareness is linked to the collapse of possibilities into definite moments is to imagine yourself helping the universe become real. Even if that is only metaphor, it is a beautiful one, that each conscious moment is a thread woven into the tapestry of existence. Others remind us of humility. Perhaps consciousness is simply emergent, arising from complexity in ways we do not yet understand. Perhaps no new physics is needed. Yet even then the mystery does not fade. Why should circuits of matter give rise to the redness of red, or the sweetness of memory? Why should atoms, arranged in just the right way, produce the glow of being? The hard problem remains, shimmering like starlight just beyond reach. And so, the choice is not between mystery and no mystery. It is between different kinds of mystery. Quantum consciousness offers one story. Classical neuroscience offers another. Both circle the same quiet fact, that awareness exists, fragile yet undeniable, at the heart of our lives. For the listener, perhaps drifting now between waking and sleep, this is the gift to carry forward. You need not solve the puzzle to feel its wonder. Awareness itself is the treasure. To breathe, to rest, to dream. That is already enough. Imagine now that your mind is like a lantern glowing softly in the night. Around it stretches the universe, vast and quiet. Whether your light is fueled by quantum collapses or by classical rhythms does not matter. What matters is that it shines, and in shining it illuminates a world of colours, memories and hopes. As you settle deeper into rest, let this thought soothe you. You are part of something larger. Perhaps your consciousness is a local flame, flickering in its own rhythm. Perhaps it is a spark woven into the cosmic fabric, resonating with hidden order, perhaps both. In any case, you belong here, and your awareness is not an accident. It is a miracle of being. And so, we end as gently as we began. Thank you for joining this quiet journey into the mystery of quantum consciousness. Whether your eyes are still open or already drifting closed, may you feel comfort in knowing that the questions remain open, and that curiosity itself is a form of connection to the universe. Before you drift fully into sleep, take one last breath and let it out slowly. The world will be here in the morning, the mystery will remain, and your awareness, precious and fleeting, will awaken again, ready to weave another day of moments. And now, as the story rests, we leave you with a soft teaser for another night's journey. How does the brain build a reality that isn't there? Until then, may your sleep be peaceful, your dreams gentle, and your wonder quietly alive.